Chris Sutton, you won Premier titles, north and south of the border. You played for your country. Was football in your genes?
Yes, it was. I mean, I was from the era where it was football in the winter, cricket in the summer, and my father was a professional footballer, good player, played for Norwich, Chester, Carlisle, and he then retired because of a knee injury, became a teacher and carried on playing amateur football for Great Yarmouth, which is where I remember him playing. So you could say it was genetic. He was a good reader of the game, very clever player.
What was your earliest experience of professional football?
I actually went for a trial at Norwich City when I was 12 years old, went for a 6-week trial period at a thing called the Centre of Excellence back then, which was, like the academies they have nowadays. And 6 weeks later, Norwich City, maybe wisely, rejected me. So, they released me, and there were other boys there who were on the schoolboy forms and who progressed. But for 3 years, I'd had that rejection, and I preferred cricket to football and took my cricket a lot more seriously. But then my last school year, I did well in a local county cup competition, scored a hat-trick in the semi-final, hat-trick in the final, and then I got another chance at Norwich City. And I was lucky. I played in a game against a really poor team. I think I scored 10 goals, and they weren't sure. The manager was Dave Stringer. When I say they weren't sure whether to give me a contract because they had still followed me from afar. But they gave us a 2-year YTS contract, and it was really from that moment where my career kicked on.
Why did they release you at 12? I'm hoping you're going to tell me it was because you were too small.
I was 6 foot, I think, when I was 12. So no, I just it was a period I was quite gangly, knock-kneed, skinny. I had an eye for a goal. Look, I mean, it's very difficult to judge at that age. What it did do, you think 12 years old, it really affected me, and I thought that was my chance. Absolutely gone. And had it not been for my father, who really pushed me through those teenage years, big on fitness. I played a variety of sports, but he was the driving force, and the fitness I did during that period, I think, set me in really good stead for when I went back to Norwich. At 15, 16, got the opportunity, and I have to say, in that 2-year YTS period, the boys who had coasted through the system and thought that was going to be a natural progression, I'd overtaken them mentally. I wanted it more than them.
Can you remember the feeling you had, all the emotions, when you made your first team debut for the team that you supported?
Yeah, I can. I got my opportunity, do you blimey, I think it was against Coventry, and I came on. I was in the second year of my YTS contract, which, Norwich was a really good club to develop at because you got the opportunity. You were the next one in. This was just before the days where there was an influx of foreign players, Scandinavian players, which came over, and I did well in the youth team, into the reserves, performed well in the reserves. Next one in, thrown in. And in many ways, I'd come from nowhere to the Norwich first team in the space of 2 years, and that was me up and running.
In the inaugural season of the Premier League, was there a time that you believed that Norwich would win the title?
No, and I think that was our problem, and it was an incredible season. Looking back at that time, Mike Walker. I think it was Mike Walker's first season in charge, legendary status now. And it was an incredible season. I think we had a negative goal difference. We just used to go for games, but never at a point during the season. We got some incredible results, unbelievable results. Never at any point during the season did, I think, the players think that we could win the league.
Do you regret that now?
No, I don't. I mean, this was a great, Manchester United team. I think that was why we could have won it, yeah. But that was why these players played for Manchester United, and we played for Norwich City, and that's not me being disrespectful to the players of Norwich City. Norwich City was a good Premier League or Division 1. It was the first season of the Premier League club, but we weren't Manchester United. And I think when you look through their team, Hughes, Brian Robson, Ince, Bruce, Pallister, Schmeichel, I think Eric Cantona had just gone there. You could see what they went on to achieve, and we didn't quite have that. But what we did have, we had some superb footballers who really shaped my career. And had it not been for the likes of Ruel Fox, Ian Crook used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day, but boy could he pass. I mean, incredible passer. And without the likes of those two, I'd say especially, who were creative in terms of making chances for me, then I was very, very lucky that I had a supply line, and it was down to them really that my career kicked on.
What did Norwich's famous win in the UEFA Cup against Bayern Munich do for your reputation and also your development?
Do you know what? It was one of those games where, this sounds ridiculous, but we could beat anybody, and we could. Did we think we'd beat Bayern Munich? Absolutely not. It was surreal. I'd actually had a dust up with the kit man just before the game. I'd asked him for another pair of socks, and he'd gone to Delvin to the skip to get them, and I flipped him in, locked him in, and he was a Scottish guy called Jock Robertson, and he came out. I eventually unlocked the skip, and this is before we're going out to play Bayern Munich, Olympic Stadium. He came out swinging, and so
some people have no sense of humour.
I mean, he didn't get it really. So maybe that was what inspired us. But it was a great night, and I mean, we deserved it. Jeremy Goss, his iconic goal, Mark Bowen, scoring. Brian Gunn, Scottish goalkeeper, Norwich City legend, had a big night. What was more impressive than that for me was we still had to play them at home. We go behind early on in the game at a packed Carrow Road, and to hold our nerve, get back in the game and win in the manner which we did was super impressive. And they were sour. They were I think Lothar Matthäus, big figure in German football, he didn't take defeat very well. Surprise. I used to buy the papers every day, see my name on the back, Sutton linked here, there, with everyone, and I used to love it. Used to lap it up.
21, when Blackburn made you the most expensive player in Britain, how did that £5 million price tag sit on your shoulders?
It didn't sit well. I think that the season, that would have been 93-94 season, I started the season really strongly in terms of goal scoring. Everything clicked, and to be honest, I've lived off the back of that season ever since. That one season I scored 25 Premier League goals, and again, not such a good season league-wise, but that was the Bayern Munich season when we really made a name for ourselves. And the chairman, Robert Chase, got me in just before Christmas and said that we aren't a selling club anymore, Chris. We want to hold on to our manager, Mike Walker. We're not going to sell our best players. So I signed a contract, had a goal bonus. The only contract I had that I'd signed where there was a goal bonus, £500 a goal if we won or drew. And I scored 2 goals on Boxing Day at White Hart Lane at Spurs, and it was great. I was swanning around town, new deal, giving it the big one in the pubs and the clubs of Norwich, and everything was great. And then Mike Walker went to Everton, which was a huge blow to me. It was a big blow, I think, to the club, to the fans, because we had something going there, and all of a sudden Mike goes. Ruel Fox is sold to Newcastle United. My mate, good, fantastic player, and that was a turning point really. And I wouldn't say I had outgrown Norwich. I'd done really well that season, but you know what happens in football. I was, you know, courted after, and United, Spurs, all the big clubs were in for me, but Norwich agreed the £5 million fee. With Arsenal, George Graham, the chance to play with Ian Wright, or with Blackburn, Kenny Dalglish, the chance to play with Alan Shearer, and it was too big to turn down.
Yeah, what was it that made you choose Blackburn? Because at that time they were only recently back in the top division. So was there a touch of gamble?
What are you? You're not suggesting money, finance? Were you at that time the big spenders?
No, I was suggesting Kenny Dalglish, my hero, might have lured you.
Yeah, Blackburn.
Now that you mention it,
Blackburn were the team pushing the season before. Were, you know, really getting close to United. So, and the chance to play with Alan Shearer as well. You know, you felt that they were going places.
What did you learn from Kenny Dalglish?
What did I learn? I learned a lot in terms of leadership. I learned a lot in terms of how he made you feel. As a player, I think he was extremely organised. He'd done everything as a player. First and foremost, you had respect for him for what he had achieved as a football player. But then, as a manager, I think he'd won 3 league titles with Liverpool at that stage, and he made me feel wanted. And I think, putting it simply, that is what, you know, that's what you want as a player. And I was worried because, you know, with the fee, and I was. You know, it didn't sit right because I'd been at Norwich where there's no pressure. Where you talk about Bayern Munich, you beat your Manchester, or you get results against Manchester United, you beat your Liverpools, and nobody expects it. Soon as you go for big money, you know, I was being questioned before I'd kicked a ball. I used to buy the papers every day, see my name on the back, Sutton linked here, there, with everyone, and I used to love it. Used to lap it up, and you know. Think I was the big I am. All of a sudden, went to Blackburn before I'd kicked a ball. Is he worth the money? People doubting you, this, that, and the other. And like a big baby, I didn't like it.
How did that affect your demeanour?
You know, I didn't like it on the inside. It was important I got off to a good start. And I think my debut, we drew 1-1. I missed a few chances, questioned. You know, but the second game, I got off the mark against Leicester and scored a hat-trick not long after against Coventry City at home, and you know the sort of SAS partnership was up and running.
Did you know from the beginning that Sutton and Shearer would work?
No, I didn't. What I liked about when I first, you know, this was my first move. I was a young man. What I liked about it is the feeling I had at the club, which clearly isn't there anymore. It was a family club. Jack Walker, the owner, loved the club, backed the club, put money into the club, and wanted to make the townspeople happy. And you know, the board were all Blackburn people. There was a real warmth about the club, and that was the first thing where, you know, myself and my family were made to feel extremely welcome. Then on the pitch, I think it was about proving myself really, and my first, well, you know, I'd had to do it as a youngster. In many respects, and that had put me in good stead. Different sort of pressure, but you want to prove yourself to your teammates. And then I was, again, similar to Norwich, lucky the team I played in. And we weren't a pretty team. I don't mean sort of looks-wise, Davey. I mean in terms of the way we played. We weren't the greatest on the eye, the greatest team which has ever won the Premier League on the eye, but we were effective. And, you know, we had grafters, 2 good wingers, Wilcox, Ripley, Tim Sherwood, really good leader. The backline, Henningberg, Graham Lasso, good fullbacks, Colin Hendry. Tony Gale came in from West Ham, did a good job in the first half of the season. Then a young Ian Pearce, very good Tim Flowers in goal. We knew our jobs, we knew our roles, and we were a really effective team, and you know, like a juggernaut early on in the season, just unstoppable. And Shearer was the man.
What was your relationship like with Shearer on and off the park?
Well, I think people make too much of that. Shearer wants to be number one. He wanted to be number one. That's what made him special. I essentially had gone there and taken the place of his mate Mike Newell. They used to travel in, Mike Newell, Alan and Tim Flowers from Southport every day. And, you know, looking back, I was young. I felt slightly uncomfortable, if that's the right word,
Unwelcome?
with it. I wouldn't say unwelcome. I think it's where you have to prove yourself, and that's where you have to, you know, you can't, you know, you're better not to worry about these things. But I wouldn't say that anybody made me feel unwelcome. You have to, you know, you have to earn the right. And I felt that was always the case. But I think that you know, off the pitch, I used to live in and around Blackburn, nice area, and Alan used to, you know, live at Southport, and you know, you're in a dressing room with 25 other blokes. So because you play together doesn't mean that you're going to go out together. But I always got on okay. I thought that was too much was made because of that. But you know, he was a winner. He wanted to score the most goals, and I think that was just the way it was. But you know, similar traits to Larson in that respect.
Should you and Alan Shearer have been utilised as a ready-made partnership for the England team?
I wouldn't say that. It was a huge disappointment to me that I didn't get more caps, but that was only down to one person.
Who?
Well, that was down to myself. You know, I made a huge error of judgment. I've told this story a few times with the England B. I thought I was going to be picked into a squad after making my debut, and Glenn Hoddle, I phoned Glenn and told him what I thought of it, and he told me that I wouldn't play for England again, and he was right. Whatever I thought at the time, you have no right to do as a player what I did. And
why did you do it then?
Because that's the way I felt, and I thought it was unjust, but I should have approached it in a different way. But if I was to look back through every moment of my life and my career, I do put my foot in it numerous times, you know, spur of the moment.
Why do you think you do that?
I think I have similar traits to my dad,
Which are?
Short-tempered at times and heart on sleeve and say what I think, and it's not always a good thing. And you know, sometimes sitting back, sucking it in, and reflecting is a better option. But I was never like that really, and that's. But I think most footballers, you know, are similar to that. It's the nature of the job.
You did win the Premier League in your first season. Was that beyond your wildest dreams, even though Blackburn had come close the year before?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't expected, but neither was it beyond my wildest dreams at all, because Blackburn were pushing. And when you see the team we had and what Jack Walker was building, we were good. We were effective. When you had the likes of, you know, playing up with Shearer, you stand in the tunnel, you know you're going to win games. You give him a chance, you know what's going to happen. And we, you know, solid, good goalkeeper, so we knew we were in games.
What are your recollections, if you have any, of the celebrations?
The emotion was pure relief because we had been in front. We were 9 points clear. So I'd scored at QPR. We were 9 points clear, 6 games to go. And then I think the doubt set in, and United did what United have done for years and years. And you'd go home, you'd watch their games on a Sunday afternoon, and it would, you know, nothing in it until the end. And guess what? United had scored, and they had a habit of that, and they piled the pressure on, and they had to better our result at Anfield, and they ended up, they had to beat West Ham, and I mean, I've seen the game. You know, Andy Cole misses a few chances. McCloskey in the West Ham goals, making unbelievable saves, and the Jamie Redknapp free kick at Anfield wasn't going to matter anyway. Not that, you know, playing in the game at the time, you know, it was like, oh, you know, you have that emotion of just feeling devastated, utterly sick. You know, you felt physically sick. Within 30 seconds, you hear the crowd. Blackburn fans go up. I mean, it was an incredible day. It would have been better had it been different in terms of, you know, we'd have won 3-0 and cruised to the title, but that wasn't the way.
How on earth, just 4 years after clinching the title, being champions of England, did Blackburn contrive to get relegated?
I think we'd had a close call once or twice. I think once before, actually. I think it was the third season I was there. I think Ray Harford was the manager in the second season, and then the third season, I think he was still in charge. Obviously, need to check that, but I think Ray Harford was in charge. Things didn't go well. We had a caretaker, Tony. I think we had 4 points from 11 games, and which was pretty desperate. Desperate start. I don't think many teams ever recovered from more than that. But we beat Liverpool, scored a couple of goals at Ewood Park against Liverpool, and we ended up staying up okay in the end. But the last season under Brian Kidd, Brian Kidd had come with this big reputation, and I actually found, as a manager, I found him a little bit disappointing.
How did it feel to be relegated, and how did that affect your mindset?
The second half of the season, I had an issue with my adductors, and I didn't play much in the second half of the season. I love Blackburn as a club. I like going back there now. I like the area. It was extremely sad. And the person I felt most sorry for was Jack Walker, who had done so much for the club, good loyal set of fans, and I think that was the biggest tragedy of it all. I thought he was a good man. I thought he was a good manager. Gianluca Vialli had faith in me. I felt.
When did you hear you were going to Chelsea? And did you have any doubts?
Well, actually, at the end of the season, Manchester United came back in for us, and Chelsea came back in, so I had a choice where to go. And of course, I wanted to stay in the Premier League, and I just, I fancied Chelsea. I really spoke to Gianluca Vialli, who was the manager. Really liked him, and wanted to go down and see where Chelsea were building at that side. And they were trying to build a side to push for the Premier League title. Good players, the likes of Poirier, Desailly, Leboeuf, had a really exciting team. They were trying to make the next step.
Why didn't it work at Chelsea?
I don't. People talk about stars. Maybe stars didn't suit you, this, that and the other. I went for big money. I talked about when I went from Norwich to Blackburn, British record transfer fee, gone for big money from a struggling Blackburn side to Chelsea. I had a poor debut, missed a couple of chances. I think I let it affect me. And,
really, despite all your experience?
I think I did. I don't think the second half of the season with Blackburn, I hadn't played much football, but I'm not going to use excuses for my time at Chelsea. It was down to me. It wasn't down to anybody else. I lost confidence. Like a deluded footballer, I would wake up in the morning and tell myself I hadn't, and I was all right. And I think the biggest thing in football, biggest thing in striking especially, you can't hesitate. You cannot hesitate. And I've hesitated. Looking back, I hesitated. You have to be instinctive when you're moving, at that level. And, it's the highest level. And you go for big money, and we've seen Chelsea strikers in the Premier League subsequently since. You're judged on goals. And sometimes my, all-round play was okay, and, I'd give it a go and I'd work hard. But, it all went wrong. I signed a 6-year deal, big deal, a lot of money, and I thought I was going to, be there and really settle. When someone has faith in you, like Gianluca Vialli had faith in me, I felt I let him down. I did. I thought he was a good man. I thought he was a good manager. He was a man who taught me actually a lot through training, little things with, finishing. He was a superb player himself. In a perverse way, moving to Chelsea, I think, helped me become a better footballer through Vialli and some of the things he taught me. And And I think that helped me further on in my career. And I can give you an example of that in terms of one of the best. I didn't score many good goals. One of the best goals I scored was against Juventus in the Champions League left foot volley, and I'd spend afternoons with Vialli practicing volleying, and he'd show me the technique, getting your hip up. It's not about how hard you try and hit the ball. It's all about the connection. And although I'd won a Premier League Golden Boot before then, but even at that age, I was still learning.
Were you, when you went to Celtic, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but were you genuinely, did you feel like damaged goods?
No, it's not disrespectful. I'd lost form. It's the way it is. I didn't feel like damaged goods. I think I was playing for my career at that stage, though. I think, my career had dipped. And so you want to play at the top level. You want to be the best you can. So in that respect, I think it was a big risk, me coming to Scotland and to Celtic in terms of perception. Could have gone to Spurs, wanted to get out of London, absolutely wanted to get out of London. Could have gone to Middlesbrough and played under Brian Robson, who was a man I really respected a lot. Good people, went to meet Middlesbrough. But coming to Celtic, when I say big risk coming to Scotland, it was a big risk because had I fallen away in that first year at Celtic, then that probably would have been my career over at the top level.
What was it about Celtic that made you want to join the club? Was it Martin O'Neill's sales pitch, or did you know about the reputation of Celtic then?
I feel lucky I came to Scotland when I did. I feel lucky that I think I played in one of the best periods that Scottish football. I mean, I'm there to be shot down in flames. One of the best periods in Scottish football. Rangers had dominated the 90s. Celtic had stopped the 10 in a row, but they hadn't really gathered great momentum. And, I was lucky enough to be part of a Martin O'Neill team, a period at Celtic where fans actually had great hope and could see, the wheel turning and things changing around, because Rangers were the dominant force in the 90s, and they were strong. They'd won the league by 21 points, I think, the season before I arrived, and they were a good, strong Rangers team. What I did know is that Martin O'Neill, his reputation down south was huge. I think he turned down Leeds before he came to Celtic, and he wasn't coming up to mess around. Martin was coming up. I think Dick Advocaat was the Rangers manager. Martin loves a challenge. It's his nature. He loves a scrap. But he's a clever man, and he was coming up to win and to push. And he, well, you have to say he was backed by the Celtic board at that particular time. But for the turnaround to happen like that, as it did the first season, was remarkable. But a lot of that was most of it was down to Martin.
How important for you personally, and for the football club's modern history, was Celtic 6, Rangers 2?
I think that was the turning point. That was the point when that was the game when Celtic fans knew that things could turn, maybe should turn. Still a long way to go after it, but I think that particular game, that really knocked Rangers back psychologically. And I know people will say, well, they beat you 5-1 in the next fixture, but they knew we were coming for them at that stage. I think we'd won all their games, they'd won all their games, and we didn't know how that was going to materialise. But what Martin O'Neill was good at was taking the pressure off. And when I say that, never once did he ever talk about winning titles. It was always about Rangers as the benchmark. He showed great respect to Rangers, and I think that had a big part. We believed what we were doing in the confinement of the dressing room. We knew with the start we'd had, we knew after that game we could push them. Did we think we'd overtake them? No, but that's down to the manager. It's down to the players and what the players were thinking. The characters in the dressing room at that time it wasn't over. It's great, but you put that game away, however good it was. But what we did know is we could, on our day, we could beat anybody, and that game that was the springboard to everything which happened under Martin O'Neill at Celtic, and because we had the confidence, this was a good Rangers team. You know, we've seen Rangers teams, in recent years not anywhere near that level. You know, this was a Rangers team with the huge Dutch connections. You know, over the years, Van Bronckhorst, De Boers, you know, Michael Moles, Arthur Newman, Barry Ferguson was a fantastic player. Fernando Rickson came in. You know, it was yo-yoing for 5 years, and really exciting time to play football.
Henrik Larsson's Celtic career had been mixed up until that point, but do you take a little bit of satisfaction?
No, I think Henrik was his own man, is his own man, has never changed. I think that he had that horrendous leg break. What I liked about Henrik, and what I liked about him more so than any other player I partnered up front, was the fact he was so unselfish. He really was. It's okay, you know, giving him praise, saying he was a team player. I had a good relationship with him off the pitch as well, but I think that was down to mainly in the first pre-season we were in Denmark, and Germany, I think, and I just went and had a conversation and just said, I've come up and I've not come up here to to outdo you in any way. I'm here. I'll pass to you. I'll be unselfish. If there's an opportunity where I can square it, I'll square it. And sort of in his typical way, he said okay. And then I'm thinking, blimey, what's he thinking? Because that was what was good about Henrik. You didn't sort of always know what he was thinking. He was a ruthless individual. And
off the park too.
He has a good sense of humour, but Henrik was like, he was like John Lennon. The rest of us people used to pay us attention, in and around Glasgow, but Henrik couldn't go anywhere. Swarms. He was, Henrik was the greatest. He was the legend, but he, you're saying that about me to him. It was far more the opposite way round. He was good for me. He also understood what my strengths were, and that was the biggest thing. And it was a partnership where we knew how to play off each other. And I was always at my best throughout my career when I played with another striker. I mean, nowadays the game has changed in that teams play one up with one off. I could do the one off, and link up was always goal scoring throughout my career. Fluctuated at times, but link-up was really my strong suit, I would say.
Was he a better partner, Henrik, than Alan Shearer was for you?
I played with Alan Shearer for one season. Alan Shearer was absolutely ruthless, and we ended up winning the Premier League. When I moved to Celtic, I appreciated my football. I appreciated what I had. I appreciated my career, and I think it took the disappointment at Chelsea for me to have that, because I think you take things for granted. I took things for granted. So then, when I'd had that setback, I'd had that knockback, I was hungry again really hungry to prove myself, because my career could have gone down. It was it was heading down, so I needed to do something about it. But then, under Martin O'Neill, to play in the team which I played in, I actually, woke up in the morning and pinched myself and thought, those years under Martin, I appreciated like no other, because I knew what I had. And I think in the younger days I took it for granted, and I was wrong to do that. And that taught me a lesson. Celtic Park under the lights, we could go toe to toe with anybody.
You won the treble in your first year at Celtic. Was that the highlight, or was there more to come?
The highlight for me, looking back at Celtic, trophies are great. Personally, I used to like the big games, the Rangers games, the European nights were the special nights. They're the ones I look back on now throughout my career, and I think Celtic Park under the lights, and our team was, we could go toe to toe with anybody, and we did. I think we lost to Barcelona. That was the only loss, and guess who came back and ruined that for us?
How important for you, looking back, was Seville and that amazing UEFA Cup run?
Oh, it was an incredible season. It had all started with the disappointment of Basel away, where I actually nearly scored in the last minute. The shot went just past the post. It was a special time. It was the most, in terms of seasons, we didn't win anything that season, but for other reasons, that European run, and whether we like it or not, taking the scalps of English teams was huge for us. It was massive. And we played a lot of English teams in the pre-season. Used to go down and warm up and thump them. But you've got to do it when it matters. And we'd had the Blackburn, the men against boys game, which was, and I love Blackburn as a club, but that was just foolish beyond belief. We were laughing we were laughing inside when we went back down to Blackburn after we'd beaten them 1-0, and they'd come out, Gary Flitcroft, who I played with, and Graham Souness. But we were laughing inside because we knew we hadn't done ourselves anywhere near the justice in that game. We knew we hadn't even got started. So the desire then when we went down there to prove a point, not to lose our heads, but to stay concentrated and play them off the park. That was a really special night, albeit against Blackburn, but it was the nature of what was said. And you have your personal pride. And then the Boa Vista game. No one could have scored that goal. No one other than Henrik. To have that ability, that quickness of feet to finish that mind to execute that skill was special. And coming back from that game, there were thousands of fans at Glasgow Airport. I mean, it was, makes the hairs on the back of my neck, and it's quite a hairy neck, standing up now thinking about it.
If there were thousands at Glasgow Airport then, there were many, many more, an unbelievable amount of supporters. Over 100,000 made their way to Seville, at the very least. How do you look back on that now? Because it was, I detected at the time there was a lot of anger in the Celtic team, the way that Mourinho's team played that night, Porto.
And there was, and you're enraged as a player. You're enraged as a player at that time. What happens, the way the game pans out, and they were disgraceful. They were disgraceful. The bottom line in all this is that they end up with a UEFA Cup. Jose Mourinho kickstarts his career really, and they won the Champions League the year after. It was a massive disappointment because you play in a final, you want to win. The memories of Seville, going to the game, the sea of green and white, they'll live with all the players forever. And it was, again, after the game, you have your regrets, you have the disappointment, but the one player you felt for in all this was Henrik, really, because he deserved more. Having said that, he won a Champions League a few years later, so but that was a bitter pill to swallow. In the way that the game panned out. There's no point sort of bearing grudges all these years later about Porto, but we all knew that they were good at feigning injury and running down the clock.
Did it all change after Henrik left, or more after Martin O'Neill left?
Well, it was bound to change after Henrik left. If you lose a big figurehead, your most important player, you lose all those goals. You lose a little bit of belief. And when I say that, I mean when you're thinking how many times he bailed us out. You stand in the tunnel, you know what's going to happen in a game more often than not. I mean, you know, the higher level you go against the better opposition, you have an idea. We all have an idea how the game is going to pan out. Stand in the tunnel with a Larson, you know you've got every chance of winning a game.
Were you sad to leave? Was that the best period of your career, do you think?
Really sad to leave, but I knew I had to. I knew I had to. My family were desperately sad to leave Glasgow. I was, but I really had no choice. It put me into a corner. You have your personal pride and things, and I was angry. I was angry when I left, very angry and upset, because I'd had the best part of my career. You know, where I'd loved it. I'd loved that 5 years, and I've told you why I loved it. You know, with what happened at Chelsea, and I knew I'd never get that back again. I knew, you know, I'd never get that feeling again, and you know, subsequently I haven't.
Was the Midlands an anticlimax after that then?
An anticlimax for Birmingham. I took them straight down. No, I went there. They were struggling, and I liked Steve Bruce. Things didn't work out there, and I was, you know, at the end of the season, I had an operation on my adductors, and I was thinking about retiring at that stage. And then Martin had gone to Villa, and they were struggling, and Martin phoned me up, and he said, "Chris, we're really struggling. We're hopeless. Will you come and sign?" And I said, "Oh, that's very kind, Martin." I said, "Thanks for making me feel so welcome." But that's, you know, that's the way it was. And I was happy to be reunited with Martin again, because I knew he liked me really, and glad to be back amongst, you know, I've mentioned them, John Robertson and Steve Walford, and they were a great team at Celtic, and Martin needed John Robertson in my book. He was a huge influence, great player he was, huge influence on my time at Celtic. And I'd say, you know, Martin, of course, as manager was a big influence, but, you know, what John Robertson did for me as well was, you know, enormous.
In 2009, you moved into management. In League Two, Sincil Bank was the place. How would you describe your year at Lincoln City?
I went through the process. I went into a struggling team. I think they'd lost 9 out of the first 12 games, and no budget to work with. And I think we did pretty well in keeping the team up. We got some loans in. I mean, you know, you're scrapping for your life there. You have to do your own scouting, which is fine. I knew what I was going into. Martin helped me with loans from Villa, some good boys. We got a loanee in from Leeds United, David Sommer, who was the difference really in terms of staying up, and we did do.
Do you think you were cut out for management?
But, you know, something which I wouldn't, you know, rule out again at all. But I like what I do very, very much now. But I enjoyed that period. I enjoyed working with players. Did I enjoy it honestly as much as playing? Of course not. Did I enjoy it more than standing on the television alongside Ali McCoist? Of course not.
Why did you go into the media?
I got an opportunity really to come in. I didn't know how that would go. And to be honest, you know, I had this many times, and I'll probably get this in before you say it. My relationship with the media was mixed as a player, and I told you when I was younger at Norwich, I loved it. Would speak to anybody who would listen to me because I loved the adulation, little bit of stick, sulked, you know, the bottom lip out, and didn't like it. I didn't like criticism, this, that, and the other. And then, to be honest, I just thought, don't commit. Shouldn't say this, but don't say anything other than when I lost my head. When I'd just say things that, you know, get it all out there. But don't set myself up with things. And that was the way I felt. And actually, in Scotland, I got on well with a lot of the press boys, but didn't really give them too much.
I know.
But that was on. But no, I'm lucky to be in this position. I enjoy what I do. I'm lucky to work with.
Listen, you've gone at this like a charging bull. Was that something that was in your mind? I'm not going to be one of those pundits that kind of, you know, doesn't tell the truth. No. You go for it.
No, I wouldn't say I'd go for it. I think
Was it a conscious decision though?
you know, you can say it's a game of two halves, this, that and the other, and he may have scored and he may not have scored. And I think that the truth is I think I was pretty honest as a player, and maybe one of my biggest strengths was I was self-critical, and you know, I would always work off the back of the mindset that I wasn't a natural talent. I needed to work exceptionally hard at things, and I can't remember coming off a pitch without thinking I should have done that better. Probably one game, Juventus in the Champions League, where we beat them, and I thought I was pretty good tonight. But there was a header late on where I headed it back across the keeper over the bar, and I still think, but in terms of all-round performances, and that's, you know, I think, and I've, you know, carried that through. Some people don't agree with what I say. Maybe a lot of people don't, but I say it because I think it, and I think it's the right thing to do. And you know, to be honest, since I've been doing stuff in Scotland, I've been accused from Celtic fans about attacking their club. I've been accused of by Rangers fans, probably more so, but that's because they've had a bad period. But I say what I think, and if people think different, that's fine. But that's the way it is.
Chris, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.